Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hyperspace on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, and a special thank you to webmaster and producer Keith Rowland. And my special guest this evening is Merrell Fankhauser. And Merrell Fankhauser has led one of the most diverse and interesting careers in music. He was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and moved to California when he was 13 years old. Merrell went on to become one of the innovators of surf music and psychedelic folk rock. His travels from Hollywood to his 15-year jungle experience on the island of Maui have been documented in numerous music books and magazines in the United States and Europe. Merrell has gained legendary international status throughout the field of rock music. His credits include over 250 songs published and released. He is a multifaceted and multi-talented singer, songwriter, and unique guitar player whose sound has delighted listeners for over 35 years. In the early 60s, Merrell led the instrumental surf group The Impacts, who had a hit with their album titled Wipeout, which was reissued in 1994 on Delphi Records in the United States and in 1995 on Repertoire Records in Germany. And Merrell has a CD coming out soon. Hopefully, I think it's going live around April, and that will be called Signals from Malibu, which we're looking forward to. He also has a new book out called Calling from a Star, the Merrell Fankhauser Story, and we're going to be discussing that tonight. This book is available on Amazon.com and other online sources in select stores and ebook. And his website is www.merrellfankhauser.com. And please welcome Merrell to the show this evening. Hi, Merrell.
Hi, Solaris.
How you doing?
I'm doing good here in California today. It's been a little unseasonably cold and foggy, but then we have our hot days too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I kind of like the mist, so that's kind of nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your new book, Calling from a Star. Yeah, and I read your book and I loved it. I thought it was extremely well written and just really a nice reflection insofar as looking down the timeline of where you've been.
All right. Thank you.
I'm very
glad. Nice. It's selling very well, and I'm really happy about it being the first book that I've written, and I'm just glad it's being received so well.
Right. And how long did it take you to write that book?
That's an interesting question. I started the book in about 1991. But even in the late 70s, people were saying, "Oh, you should write a book, all your adventures in Hollywood and playing with different rock stars. Then you moved to an island in the South Pacific and went on a quest to find the lost continent of Mu." And they said, "That's a lot of interesting material there." And I went, "Yeah, I'll get around to it someday." So I was over here visiting my mom from Maui, and she said, "When are you going to write that book?" I said, "Mom, you're right." So I had the old typewriter there, and I started on it, and I couldn't pin down dates. And she said, "Go in the hall closet and get that box down." And bless her heart, Solaris, she saved magazine and newspaper articles going back to the 60s. And there was dates on all of this. So that was the hardest thing for me, was trying to find the timeline of when things happened. Mm-hmm. And she really helped me. And so I started, I think near the end of 1990 is when I started, but then I would, write a little, and then I'd have to go out and play live somewhere. I'd be out of town for weeks, and I'd get away from it, and so it was kind of done in pieces, and it took me clear till 2012 to finish it.
Wow.
And it just came out here a month and a half or so ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's nice because it takes you down a nice little timeline. It's like looking through your eyes. You're able to reflect on a more, what I consider to be a happier timeline in America, and the innocence and experience of life through your eyes, and which is something a little more natural. It just reminds me of a nicer, happier moment in the illusion of time. So I want to thank you for reflecting on that, because it took us on a nice little trip. And anybody who reads the biography will be experiencing that. So it's a nice little journey.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different world now than back in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like you had a really nice upbringing insofar as your family goes, and just an encouraged environment, just really nice, just a very blessed environment.
Yeah, my dad, played tenor guitar in a Dixieland band, and my mom sang with big bands, and my dad was a flight instructor and a charter pilot, and in his earlier years even raced at Indianapolis.
Right, and I wanted to get into that a little bit. I was noticing that when I was reading. That's fascinating, and some of the films he was in, right?
Yeah, he was in a movie with Clark Gable and Barbara Stanwyck about a race driver called To Please a Lady. And then he was in another movie with Mickey Rooney called The Big Wheel, and that was about racing too. My dad was a real adventurous guy, and he taught me my first chords on a guitar, and I'm really lucky to have the parents that I did.
Oh, you certainly are. And also, didn't he build his own vehicles, right?
Yeah, you read that.
I did.
Yeah, it was amazing to me, Solaris. He would take a sheet of aluminum, and he had all these body tools. He was an expert body person, he could make anything. And there'd be a flat sheet of aluminum, and a couple of days later it was this beautiful nose and tail section of a race car. And he was using Fankhauser engines, and when he first started racing, they would take a Model B Ford block and hop it up and put dual overhead cams and fuel injection on it. And then later on, he designed his own engine and went to the foundry and had him cast the block and everything. I mean, I just can't even imagine doing something like that. And he did things like that in the 40s and 50s.
That's fascinating. And where did he learn to do that?
I don't know. He didn't even graduate from high school, but his math was great. I mean,
amazing.
Yeah, he was just one of those kind of people that could figure everything out from I don't know how to explain it, a grassroots environment.
Mm-hmm. It seemed like a lot of people were very inventive back then and used their imaginations a little bit more, which I love.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm sure, how fast do those vehicles go? They're pretty fast, aren't they?
Oh, they were over 200 miles an hour.
Wow. So you got to drive some of those, didn't you?
No, I never drove any of the race cars. I was too young then, but he did teach me to fly.
Right, yeah.
And I learned to fly, and you probably read the part in the book where we ended up moving from Kentucky out here, and he took over a glider port. Mm-hmm. And it was at Lake Elsinore, which is south of Los Angeles in this beautiful valley. And I can remember sitting out on a moonlit night with him and talking to him about UFOs and what he thought, and he said, yeah, there's got to be something else out here in this big universe. And he even helped me design a sort of a saucer-shaped model once that actually flew.
Cool. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So did you ever get to see any anomalies or anything like with all the flying you both did? Did you ever get to see anything that was kind of unusual when you were flying?
He did, but I wasn't with him when he was in New Mexico on some kind of a weather project, and that was back in probably the mid-50s, maybe around 56, and he said that they were testing something at Alamogordo, I remember, and he said this silver, what looked like a disc, came out of this cloud and just zoomed past them like they were going backwards, and that's the only thing he ever saw. And I think I told you the other time I was on, I looked for UFOs all my life, and I never saw one till I moved to Maui, and that was in 1974.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty interesting as well. And we all know there's a lot going on over there, for darn sure. So what about the possibility of actually putting a documentary film together on your biography and your book?
Well, one of my best friends is William E. McEwen, who discovered Steve Martin and Pee Wee Herman, and he did a lot of those comedy movies. Mm-hmm. And he's retired now, and he lives in Hawaii. And he read the book, and he went, oh, my gosh. He said, if I was making movies, he said, I would start looking around to cast people to play you when you were a child, and then on up in years, and till now. And you know, he's so burnt out on Hollywood and everything to do with it now, because he spent so many years there working with Paramount and Warner Brothers that he just couldn't stand to do it again. But you never know. He might put a bug in somebody's ear that might want to do it.
I think it would make a really nice documentary film myself. Yeah, it'd be awesome to see something different like that coming out of the California area for sure. Now,
one idea he had that I'd like to run by you was to have me just sitting in a chair, because I've seen some movies done like this, and like I'm reminiscing, and just go back, and then you'd have to shoot all of these scenes, you know, that you're like reminiscing about.
Nice.
And that would be a way to do it that could be in a documentary.
Oh, absolutely. Form. Yeah, I like that idea quite a bit. Yeah. Well, I think we should set it in motion. I think that once people start reading your book, they're really going to like it. I certainly enjoyed reading it, and I found it to be just a nice reflection of the past, and also your journey through life in general. So how did you come up with Calling from a Star? What guided you to create that title for the book?
Well, you know, I wrote the song Calling from a Star, and that was inspired by my only UFO sighting at the top of Haleakala Crater in 1974, and I wrote the song after that. And you know, it's a lot of people just love the song, and there's a video for it on YouTube. And it's something that just feels like a kinship to me, is the only way I can put it. And when I finished the book, I just thought, the book's got to be called Calling from a Star, because that's what I'm doing. I'm still here on planet Earth, calling from a star.
And it sounds like you're getting a little bit of a feedback from the universe to some degree. Now, last time you were on the show, we also touched on your CD, of course, which is coming out, and the connection it had to the Malibu base. And I'd like to kind of touch on that just a little bit insofar as what they're calling the Malibu base, but kind of let our listeners know how you got involved in that a little bit.
Yeah, the signals from Malibu, I hadn't really... I was playing a lot and doing my TV show Tiki Lounge, so I hadn't really recorded anything in, 9 months or so. And I was talking to my drummer one day, and he was saying, well, what's our next project going to be? And I said, I'd like to do something out of the box, completely out of the box. And I had no idea how far out of the box it would be. And then all of a sudden, the author, Michael Luckman, got in touch with me, told me the story about this retired World War II Army guy that lived in the hills of Malibu that had picked up these strange signals, radio signals, coming from out in the ocean. And his job in the Second World War was to pinpoint where the Japanese were broadcasting from on different islands and places. So he still had some kind of range-finding equipment that he could pinpoint. And he went, this is strange. They're coming from a few miles off the shore out in the ocean. So he recorded the signals, and then he went over to the Naval Air Station that's there, Port Hueneme, and he thought maybe they were doing, some kind of experiments or training or something with submarines. And they said, no, we haven't got anything like that going out there. And so somehow he got in touch with Michael Luckman, the author, who, by the way, sadly just passed away recently. I don't know if you knew that.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And so Michael headed up the Extraterrestrial Research Center in New York. So when he got these signals, he said, hey, we've got to send these to Merrell Fankhauser. So they sent me the signals, and I swear, as soon as I started playing it, I heard a song in my head. And I went into the studio. I have a studio in my house, and put down the guitar part, the melody that I heard, so I wouldn't forget it. And then I called the rest of the band in and showed them my idea for the arrangement and my violinist, and we started recording, and within about 3 hours we had the whole thing finished. And then I spent another 2 hours mixing it, and I put the signals in the beginning of the song and going all the way through it. And that was signals from Malibu. And then I realized there was about 4 minutes more of signals that I hadn't even listened to. And so I started fiddling around on the piano with that, and out popped signals from the dome.
Or messages from the dome, right?
Messages from the dome, yeah, excuse me. And my violinist was just amazed by all of this, and he did some really nice parts on both of those songs, and then that put us into this whole kind of feeling, and within, oh gosh, not even 2 weeks, we had the whole album finished. And I sent it to the record company, Gonzo Multimedia, that I'm on in England, and they said, "We love it.
Yay.
We bloody love it. We're going to put it out."
Cool. That's awesome.
So that's the whole thing, how it happened, and it'll be out for sale. I made a bunch of copies myself, because after I was on your show, 6 people wanted to buy it, and then I was on several other shows. So I made a couple dozen of them, and I've only got 2 left. So I, kind of filled the gap till the record company can get it out there on the market.
Oh, that's wonderful. And of course, that's going live. I think we discussed off the air around April.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to be fabulous. And in the meantime, like you said, they're playing it, so it's being played throughout. I guess.
Yeah, I was sending out just the 2 songs, Signals from Malibu and Messages from the Dome, on CD, and I sent out about 70 of them, and then I got the bright idea, to save time, I should put it on an MP3. And so I've sent it out probably to another 50 to 60 stations on MP3, and there's 90 stations that I know of right now that are playing it.
That's excellent. So what kind of feedback are you getting from that insofar as the anomaly goes? Or is anybody getting any type of a vibe off of it, or have you heard anything?
Well, the most interesting thing, do you know Dr. Bob Hieronymus?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's been on Ancient Aliens several times, and he has a big show out of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. I was on that after I was on your show. And he really blew my mind, because what he had was the recording that Billy Meyer, have you heard of that
case?
Case?
That's right. Yeah, you touched on that. Right.
I did tell you about that.
Yeah.
He had that recording of a UFO that Billy Meyer had recorded in the 70s, had his dog barking at it in the background and everything. And it was really weird, Solaris. When we compared the two over the air, the signals were almost exactly the same. Mm-hmm. And, till that happened, I was kind of thinking, well, it could be our government or the military or somebody doing something. But when that happened, I went, this is something different. Because for that guy to fake those sounds in 1970, he would have had to have some kind of equipment that wasn't invented yet.
Right, I agree, and I did listen to the Billy Meyer sounds, and I totally agree with you that, yes, there's definitely a connection as far as the way they sound. Yeah, very similar, without a doubt. Yeah, and of course, Billy Meyer was tracked by a lot of government, so there was something to what he was going through. Yeah. Yeah,
and then there's been, various different, I might have told you this too, female radio hosts like yourself. Aaron Dakins was one, and there's been a couple more that have, interviewed me. And when they heard that Messages from the Dome, because the signals come out stronger in that song, they said they really got this kind of emotional feeling like they couldn't explain. And the other thing, I had it examined in an oscilloscope. I don't remember if I told you that or not.
You might have, but let's reflect on it again.
When I first heard these signals, I realized it was like two tracks, like there was a lower undulating sound, almost like a train going over railroad tracks, this da-da-da-da-da-da, and then over the top were these blips and things that almost reminded me of dolphins when I did a dolphin research project on Maui, the sounds over the top, and I could tell there was two tracks of stuff going. Well, I had a guy from a college that does sound here run it in through an oscilloscope, just the signals, and he said, you're completely right. It's like there's two tracks of information coming out here at once.
So there are layers.
Yeah,
that's
layers.
Very, very interesting. Someone just got a text here from a friend of mine named Mark, who's a big fan of yours, and he had a question about. He asked me to ask you when Merrell was on with Ken Hudnall the music the music shut down Ken's soundboard. Is that correct?
Exactly. He when he was playing the music, and I think I told you I had the same problem after I'd recorded it, and I recorded it digitally, and I mixed it down to a digital 2-track DAT machine. I was trying to burn a CD from it, hooked up digitally to my standalone CD burner, and every time it got to this spot in the middle of the song where the signals came out loud, it shut my burner down. And it wouldn't let me make a copy. And I went through 4 CDs thinking, oh, I must have a batch of bad CDs. Then I all of a sudden thought, what if I hook it up analog? So I hooked it up the old-fashioned way with RCA cables, analog, and it let me make a copy of it. Well, when Ken was playing the same song, he had a digital mixing board, and it shut his mixing board off completely.
Oh, my goodness. That's interesting.
So I recently, we did a TV show about this, and I was interviewed at our local station here, KCBX, and I was telling this whole story over the air. And he found that interesting, the engineer there, and said there must be something in that signal, and when it comes through digital that some equipment has a problem with it. It's like when UFOs, shut cars down.
It's like a jammer, huh?
Yeah, a jammer. So
it's fascinating.
At least when we were on KCBX, the station up here, it didn't shut anything down, but they had an analog mixing board that their stuff went through.
That's very interesting.
So we've done a show now, and my great editor, Adam Wagner, he's an actor and a genius. He edits my Tiki Lounge TV show. We did this great show, and we did a video to both of those songs with the band playing. And then I got a bunch of underwater UFO shots from different people that claimed they were all real. And I've had people examine them, and they're not photoshopped. And so we have all of those in the videos. So we plan to put that up on YouTube soon.
Oh, that's going to be really nice.
It's airing here in California now, but I've just been so busy I haven't had a chance to put it on YouTube, but we're going to do that.
Oh, that's going to be wonderful. And, of course, we're going to be playing the signals from Malibu and messages from the dome during the break later on coming up. So that'll be really fascinating. And we played those before, and I love listening to your music, the way you kind of incorporate the signals along with what you're developing on a more esoteric level. It feels very esoteric to me anyways. I really enjoy that music that you've created for that. It's very nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send you I didn't send you the complete album, did I?
No, I didn't get it. I just got the other two. Those
Okay,
samples.
I'll send you the CD when I've got them. You'll be one of the first to get it.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. I'm excited.
Sure.
It's going to be wonderful. And by the way, Mark Eddy says hello. He's one of your publicists, I take it. Or...
Oh, yeah. Mark has been such a great help in, booking me on lots of shows and spreading the word. He's a great guy.
He really is. He's a good egg, as I call him. Very much so. So let's talk a little bit about, I'd like to reflect a little bit back into the biography for a second here and talk about, we talked about your parents and how they had musical backgrounds. So how did they get involved in the music?
Boy, I don't know. My mom, she worked in her parents' restaurant in the 30s when she was young and a teenager up until her 20s before she met my dad. And she was always a singer, and she liked to sing. And I remember her telling me stories about how when she was in the kitchen in the restaurant, she'd sing into a pot because it made like an echo, and she pretended it was a microphone. And she was living in Kentucky at the time, and she would go out with these different bands. I know she sang once with Guy Lombardo that was fairly well known, Larry Hands, and somebody Whiting, I can't remember who that was. And then my dad just played with some Dixieland bands, and then he went in the army, and he was in Patton's Tank Division. And when he was on leave, they happened to meet at Churchill Downs, where the Kentucky Derby is run. And he told one of his army buddies, when he met my mom, he said, "That's the girl I'm going to marry."
Oh, that's cute. That's really
nice. And that's what happened, and here I am.
Right. And of course, the legend goes on and on, doesn't it? The music was kind of inherited. Now, according to your biography, you started off with a ukulele, right?
Yeah, that's what they gave me around my 10th or 11th birthday in a little book. And he showed me some chords, and I was playing, little songs that were in the book and everything. And then I just sort of started making up my own little melodies and things to these chords. And I think I probably wrote a couple of my first songs when I was about 11 or 12.
That's great. And of course, I love the part where you said you used to practice in the hangar, the airplane hangar, because it had a great echo.
Yeah, I'd go out in the airplane hangar at night because it had this great echo, and I would sing and play and listen to the radio. That was even before Elvis Presley.
Nice. Of course, they do have... Oh, go ahead.
I heard Carl Perkins, and I heard his version of Blue Suede Shoes before I ever even heard about Elvis Presley. And that was a thrill for me because in 1985, I finally got to meet Carl Perkins.
Oh, nice.
He wrote, Blue Suede Shoes and several songs that the Beatles covered also.
Exactly. Well, I think that's wonderful. I think it's funny about the acoustics, though. I used to practice my flute in the bathroom when I was younger because I like the acoustics. And the laundry room. Areas where you could really, have that resonance. So that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Sure. So how old were you when you first did your first live musical performance?
Gosh, let's see. The first time was at a talent show in San Luis Obispo at the Madonna Inn, and they were having a talent show there. I must have been 15 or somewhere around there. And then I got in another talent show. I remember that was held at a school, and there was a band playing there, a young band from the high school, and they were doing some kind of rock songs at that time. It wasn't exactly the full-on rock and roll era. And I won the talent show, and so they decided to hire me in their band.
Nice.
And that ended up being the Impacts, who in 1962 I recorded the album Wipeout with.
Right, classic. Without a doubt. Now, did you find yourself being a bit shy when you started performing live on stage, or did you feel more comfortable?
I don't know, maybe it's because my mom and my dad and everybody sang, and my sister danced at night in the house, and we sort of entertained each other, and we would all get together and sing, and it didn't faze me that much. But at one point, I remember before I did these talent shows, I was working in the theater. You probably read that part.
Mm-hmm.
And the manager of the theater, I was a cleanup person and an usher, and I was playing my guitar after the matinee, and we had cleaned up, and he heard me playing. And he said, "Oh, you sound pretty good." He said, "I used to do a clown act on the East Coast. How would you like to get up and sing a few songs in between the matinee on Saturday?" And he said, "I'll give you $12. And I said, "Do you mean I get the $12 along with the $40 I get?" And he goes, "Yeah." And so that was around 1958 or somewhere around there. And, for a kid in high school to make $52 a week,
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty good. And so I got up there and started singing all by myself. And then I remember I left the stage, and it was in between the two matinees, and I went out by the popcorn machine, and I was mobbed by teenage girls wanting my autograph. And I went, "Oh, man, I'm in show business."
That's great. I bet those. Did you sign a lot of autographs?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. I hope they held on to those. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, years later, I was performing somewhere, and a lady that had to be in her late 40s came up to me and said, "I was one of those teeny boppers that used to come and hear you at the Fair Oaks Theater." And she said, "I got your autograph."
That's nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, there's some nice
So I
people.
did that for about a year, actually.
That's excellent. So let's talk a little bit about Wipeout. So how did you get, what inspired you to write that song, Wipeout? Let's kind of reflect on that a little bit. I know we kind of touched on that before, but I'd like to touch on it again.
Yeah, well, I lived here on the Central Coast and lived near Pismo Beach. I'm only a couple miles from the ocean here where I live now. And they had the biggest dance hall between Los Angeles and San Francisco was here. And in the 40s, big bands like Tommy Dorsey and other bands, I think even Glenn Miller at some point had played at this dance hall here that was a big old-fashioned dance hall that could hold about 1,500 people. Well, I was a surfer, and I was surfing in Pismo Beach, and I had already started playing with the Impacts, and one day I just got wiped out by this big wave, and when I stumbled up on the beach and sand was coming out of my nose and my ears, the sax player went, "Ha, ha, ha, you really got wiped out." And he was trying to embarrass me in front of all these pretty girls that were sitting up against the break wall there. He loved to do that. So I was driving home, and I already had this song I'd written called Kick Out. And I thought, Wipeout, that would make a better title for the song. And so I changed the song title to Wipeout, and we only had one drum solo in it at that time. And then I started writing other instrumentals, and we'd test them out on the audience. Every weekend we became the house band at the Rose Garden Ballroom every Friday and Saturday nights. And then it went over so good they even had us do Sunday matinees. And we got to back up some of the known groups like Little Anthony and the Imperials and the Drifters and, whoever was coming through town. So we had this whole repertoire of original songs that I and the other guitar player had written. And a talent scout heard us, took us down to Los Angeles, and took us into this studio and recorded us. We didn't know anything about copyrights or contracts. We just were excited, 17-year-old guys getting to record an album. And so that he took it to Delphi Records, which was a big label at that point. They had Richie Valens and a lot of other instrumental, up-and-coming instrumental surf bands, but there weren't even that many bands at the time, and the title instrumental surf music hadn't even been coined yet. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I have this article that the local paper came and interviewed us after we recorded the album, and they called it twist music for surfers. And we thought that was funny. So it seemed like it was only a month and a half or so, and all of a sudden our album was in every store in California. And they sold them in drugstores a lot then. You'd walk into a thrifty drugstore, and there were all these bins of albums right as you walked in. I think they were $1.89 each or something like that. And there was our album. And that got us more gigs and bigger gigs out of town and in L.A. And we just thought, oh, somebody's going to send us a big check, in 6 months or something. And the checks never came in. And then somebody that knew something about music pointed out it had our names on the album and everything, but it didn't say who wrote the songs. And we had no affiliation with BMI or ASCAP, so there was no way we could get songwriting royalties, much less money for the records sold. And these two producers, Norman Knowles and Tony Hilder, they did this with a lot of young surf bands. They would take them into a studio and spend about $250 recording them for a day. And, we knew the songs so well, we could just stand up and play them one take. And we were amazed at how good it sounded in this studio. And then they'd take it to a record company and get several thousand as an advance in front and have all the royalties sent to them. And they put all of the songs in their name in their publishing company.
Yeah, that's so wrong.
And they did that to so many bands. And then there was a younger guy named Richard Delvey that was learning the producing and publishing ropes, and he was in our session when we recorded our album, and he was learning from these other two, I have to call them song sharks, how to do the business. And he met a young up-and-coming band from Glendora called the Surfaris, and he took them in the studio and produced them and did 2 songs with them, a song called Surfer Joe, a vocal, and then the rumor is that he played them our version of Wipeout that only had the one drum solo, and they ended up putting drum solos through the whole song, and they got that out on Dot Records. It started going up the charts, and Dot told Richard Delvey, who was the Surfaris manager and publisher and producer, okay, we need an album now. So he had the Surfaris go in a little cheap studio and start working on some songs, and they even covered another one of our songs called Blue Surf that did a terrible job on it. And then meanwhile, Richard Delvey took his little band and some studio players in a nice studio in Hollywood and recorded a whole group of songs and took that back to Dot Records and said, okay, here's the Surfaris album, got another big lump of money, and disappeared. And when the Surfaris album came out, they had given him their tape that they'd been working on, and they were totally, just blown away that they only had 2 songs on their own album that came out. They didn't even know who had played all these other songs, but they knew it wasn't them.
Oh, wow.
So that's a little bit of history about what was going on in the late 50s and 60s, and then still into the 70s. Just people that don't know the business and don't understand the different areas where the royalties came from and how to copyright songs. And I learned a lesson real quick, but in 1994, the copyright expired on all the songs on that album. And I went back in and recopyrighted along with the other guitar player songs that he and I wrote together.
Excellent.
And we got the copyrights back. And we've been getting a good trickle of money, but it's nothing like if you were there when the thing was selling 1 million copies.
Oh, right.
That's when the big money was made. But at least, I do have the copyrights back, and I have a little bit of money coming in.
Well, in my opinion, obviously they stole your copyright. So isn't there a way to sue them or something like that?
Well, one of the sax player's dad, who knew something about music, and my dad back then, after a year and a half and we hadn't gotten anything, they looked in to suing those guys, but first you had to find them.
Oh.
And you couldn't even find them. And then they went to an attorney, and in 1963, nobody wanted they wanted money before they would even start the suit. And they'd have to put up something like $15,000. Well, 1963, you could buy a house for $15,000, and nobody wanted to take a chance because you didn't even know if you were going to win the case or not. So it just went, like that for all of those years. And the other guitar player, he became an alcoholic over it because it just, hurt him so bad that here this big selling album, our album, sold 1 million, and that we didn't get anything for it.
Oh, that's so terrible. Yeah, I would be annoyed with that big time. That's just wrong, That's just plain wrong.
And now I've got about 400 songs released and 50 albums or something, and I'm making a living. But if you could get a lump like I should have gotten from the first release, things would be a little better now.
Exactly. No, I totally understand. Well, you're a legend nonetheless. I mean, you are. That song is just there's something about it. I mean, once people hear just a little bit of it, it's in their heads for like another week or two.
Yeah, it's action, and there was a lot of other good instrumental surf songs on that album that young guitar players, teenagers, still get a hold of me and email me and say, "What chords are you playing on Steel Pier? What kind of amp were you using? And boy, if Fender hadn't invented that reverb, you guys wouldn't have had that sound." And I said, "Well, I hate to pop your bubble, but when we first started playing, Fender hadn't invented the reverb yet. It was a chamber reverb that was in the recording studio that made that, that sound." And to me, what we were all trying to do was emulate the sound of the ocean.
Exactly. Isn't that amazing? Nowadays, with the technology, they do so many other things. A lot of special effects in the studio. But back then, I mean, it was more. To me, in my opinion, it was more real music because you can pretty much, rearrange anything nowadays and make it kind of cool. But I give more credit to the real musicians.
Exactly. That's what I say, Solaris. That was real music played by real musicians, and you're all in the room playing together. Now they do stuff in computers with a drum machine, and then they put a bass part to it that they don't even have to play all the way through. And one guitar player told me he did a session where he just played the verses and the bridge, and the engineer said, "That's all I need." And he said, "Well, I didn't finish the song." And he said, "I don't need the rest of it. I'll just copy and paste it."
Oh, no.
And that's what they do with a lot of songs, and of course rap music is all made like that. It's made with beats, in a computer, and then they've got tools now that can correct your pitch, a pitch corrector,
right,
for people that can't sing in key,
mm-hmm.
and they can just, you're flat there, and I've even seen it done with a female artist who is very well known that I won't mention. She had a husband named Sonny.
Oh, okay. Well, there are a lot of them out there. I must say they're not the women that used to sing in the old days. Not at all. The ones today.
But they could draw on the screen, with a pen, and where the notes were flat, and they could bring them up to pitch.
Wow, so they can make anybody sound good, huh?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, pretty much.
But then when you hear them live in concert, if they don't have that, if they don't have somebody working the board, I think they're going to be in trouble, right?
Oh, yeah. How many times have I heard people go to concerts and go, oh, my God, they didn't sound anything like their record.
Right.
And that's, the musicianship and the engineering of the engineers. You were playing by the seat of your pants, and what you played is what you got. There wasn't any way to go back in and fix it, till the late 60s they started doing overdubs, and you could go in if you didn't like where you sang in a certain spot, and they could punch you in. But even at the beginning, when they would try to punch a vocal in, there would be clicks on the tape, and they didn't really get that worked out till the mid 70s, to where those pops couldn't be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really something now. But I still play the old-fashioned way. We all get together and play together, and it seems like the songs that you can do in one or two takes that have that fresh inspiration are the best ones.
Oh, I totally agree. Well, there's something about uniting with soul and spirit. I don't know, it just seems like this world is becoming, and we've talked about this a little bit on the last show, a little too digitized, a little too much with too much emphasis on technology, but not enough spirit involved. In my opinion, it just seems like people are getting kind of derailed. And I like that. I just like the more natural approach to music, and real musicians who actually have some knowledge of music, how to write music, how to sing, understand tone. And I think back in the old days, it just seemed like they had a natural ability, or a lot of them did.
Yeah, it was a natural ability. I mean, I've seen people that want to be singers, and they try to sing, and they even go get vocal lessons and everything, and it just doesn't work. The people that naturally have the gift are the ones that really end up sounding good.
Mm-hmm. Even when you reflect on the big bands, because my mother used to sing with big bands too, with her sisters, and yeah, I mean that was so incredible. They had a beautiful harmony they used to sing. I mean, natural harmony they learned when they were just young women.
Yeah.
And I mean, where did they learn it? I don't know. They didn't take lessons, but man, they sounded fantastic. So this is what I mean by a natural ability that's been enhanced. And nowadays, people just run into the studio and they have all these special effects, and it's kind of a disservice to music, if you ask me.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, gosh, when you think about, how good the Beatles really were, and you those early shows they did on Ed Sullivan, and they were just up there plugged in, playing live and doing harmony, and it's there was nobody correcting anything there, and they weren't lip syncing,
right?
Which a lot of people have been caught in nightclubs lip syncing. Oh. Diana Ross, it happened to her up here in Tahoe, I think it was, and she had a cold and she couldn't sing, and she was lip syncing, and the CD started skipping.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah, there was another one too. It happened on Saturday Night Live. I forget who that was.
Oh wow.
A newer singer. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of them too. I mean, I don't want to mention names, but I do know when they go out there and they do a lot of choreography, it seems like they wear the little headsets and then they're kind of lip syncing rather. So yeah, I kind of see that too. And once again, I'm not sure what's causing that, whether it's laziness or just something else going down. But yeah, but I do like.
Harder to recreate that sound that you get in the studio. And I mean, I have to say, it was written in magazines, and I heard it on the radio, that Britney Spears was actually lip syncing in a lot of her concerts, and it was because she was doing those stressful dance routines and getting out of breath and things.
Right.
that they were lip syncing.
Right. Well, I still think true magic is just having like a guitar, some nice vocals, and drums. Just the basics without all the special effects. And you're right. I mean, when people can come into a room and just play without any, not even plugging in with electric guitars or anything, just play. I think
Oh
that you can
yeah,
really tell how talented they are,
yeah,
without a
yeah.
doubt.
I've been with a lot of really good musicians where you just sat in a circle with acoustic guitars, and each person would take their turn, singing a song, and everybody would play along and back you up. And oh gosh,
That's so nice.
some really nice stuff comes out.
Right. And that's once again, that's that connection that I think is being lost to some degree. That people, they don't communicate as much anymore. They don't look each other in the eye anymore. It's all about texting and this and that. So even if you can get together through music in a circle like that, I think is really powerful on a lot of
Yeah.
levels. Now, do you do that with your Tiki Lounge?
Yeah, we play live on stage at the Tiki Lounge, and I've had, a lot of different well-known people here
Right.
because I have this outdoor stage. I have an indoor area where I can interview people, and in the winter time, but we have the outdoor stage, and we usually start having people perform there in April, and we've been shooting the shows live back there.
That's great. I've seen it on YouTube, by the way. I like your
Oh,
watched your
good.
YouTube on there. It's really cute.
Which
Yeah.
show did you see on
Oh, I
YouTube?
can't
Do you
remember
know?
which one it was. I was just accessing a few of the shows, but yeah, they're pretty impressive. And it reminded me a little bit about I think I mentioned before the Tiki Lounge on Maui. They have I don't think you named it after that, but there is a Tiki Lounge on Maui, which is a cute little kind of like a little bar place to eat.
In Kihei, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they did that after I'd already done
Okay.
this.
I was always
and my
wondering.
and my show was showing on the air. It still is on Maui, and I thought, I wonder if they saw my show and just decided to name the restaurant
I
that.
bet you they did because that's kind of unique right there. So when you
Yeah.
were touring, did you enjoy doing the live shows or did you ever get really burned out?
No, I would get tired, but it was always a different audience, and you can play the same set of songs and you get the set down real well. And sometimes you could get a little tired of playing the same song, but you get the enthusiasm from the audience and they want to hear certain songs, and that enthusiasm keeps you going.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's kind of a momentum right there. So having your pilot's license, did you fly a lot to your gigs?
Oh no, I never flew to gigs.
No.
No.
Okay. I just
My
thought,
dad flew me to a couple of gigs, but I never flew myself to a gig, and no, that would be too much, and
right.
all the equipment and the guitars and the guys in the band. No, we're usually, like Willie Nelson in a bus or a van or three vehicles going somewhere.
Right. I think it was a lot more fun to do road trips back then, even if you were touring and doing music.
Oh
Nowadays it seems a
yeah,
little more, I don't know, it just doesn't seem as fun.
yeah. It is fun. You get to see the countryside, and it's you have more of a connection with the people instead of just getting in an airplane and open the door and you're there.
Right. No, I totally agree. Well, nowadays flying is kind of a strange thing anyway. It's like being in
Yeah.
a Twilight Zone episode.
Oh, it is. It is. My last trip to Hawaii, it was way different. The flying experience wasn't what it used to be.
Oh, really? Oh, that's too
All
bad.
all the searching and the
Right.
going through the security, and then Hawaii has gotten so overpopulated now, and poor Maui is just one big traffic jam. I was kind of sad.
Yeah, it was getting bad when I was living there. I used to bike everywhere, though. I remember passing the traffic as they were sitting there for I don't know how long while I was just riding my bike.
Now, when you told me, when did you live
I
there?
was there from it was about late 2004 into 2006. I was only there for a few years, but I was out there, working and riding my bike and doing other things. But my sister still lives out there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
loves it.
I went back in 2000. That's when I did the concert with Willie Nelson at the MAC, the amphitheater in town. And then I went back again in 2004, and I played with a guy what was his name? Captain Billy in the Pioneer Inn.
Wow. Gosh, I was
Yeah.
kind of out there, probably. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
And my girlfriend at the time, Yuriko, was a really good singer and hula dancer, and she did the hula in there.
Nice. I like that name.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was a neat trip.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, things have changed quite a bit, and I'm just hoping they don't make it like where they're building and building and building really high, and of course everything gets obstructed insofar as the view goes. But who knows what they're going to turn it into?
Yeah, I think I told you I was there in last March is when I went there, and I just couldn't believe it. It was just trying to drive from the airport to Haiku. We were staying with my producer friend. It just took forever. And then we decided to go down to Paia to go to Charlie's restaurant, and there was no place to park. And it took us 45 minutes just to drive through that little town. It was bumper to bumper.
Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to head for a break real quick, but we are going to go ahead and play Signals from Malibu and Messages from the Dome. So stay with us, everybody, here at the Dark Matter Radio Network and my special guest, Merrell Fankhauser.
I would love to have a few words on it.
And you are listening to the Dark Matter Radio Network. That was Signals from Malibu. And I am Solaris BlueRaven, and this is Hyperspace. And my special guest is Merrell Fankhauser. Merrell, you with me?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. And I love that tune. That's awesome.
Oh, good.
And we'll be playing
Sal Garza's violin on that really makes it happen.
Yeah, I like the way you just entwined everything with the signals and then your own music, which is really nice. It's also, we're going to play your other song, Messages from the Dome, at the end of the show. So, yeah, those are just really nice. And of course, it sounds like you just had the flow going when you heard those signals that you were talking about. You just kind of calibrated all the music.
Yeah, once I heard that first set of signals, it was almost immediate. I listened to about 3 minutes of it, and all of a sudden I heard this song in my head. And so I stopped that machine and ran in the studio and picked up my guitar so I wouldn't forget that main melody that you hear in the song. Because I've had that happen before. I'll get an idea for a song, and then it'll happen in the car even. And I'll go into a store, and there'll be music coming out of the loudspeakers, and it like erases everything that was in my mind.
Oh, I don't like that. I understand that feeling too. That's why you need a piece of paper real close, close by when you're driving your vehicle, right? Pull off on the side of the road.
Well, having those little dictaphones helps.
Yeah,
of
course.
Carry a little tape recorder, a little cassette with me, and sing into it.
Those are awesome. I used to have a cassette player too. Of course, those are like obsolete now, right? I guess everybody has their iPhones now.
Yeah, you can do it on an iPhone, or they still make little digital dictaphone recorders, little handheld things.
Yeah, those are great. Excellent. So you did travel a lot when you were growing up. From what I read in your biography, it seemed like your family moved around a lot. That was more because of your father, right?
Yeah, well, I remember, somewhere there in the early 50s when we were living in Kentucky, and I remember the snow back there, and I built an igloo in my front yard one winter, and it was very cold, and my dad started putting dreams of California in our head. He said, we're going to move to sunny California. And we had to come out here, I think it was about 1954. He was building a race car, and he had to come to this special garage out here to do some things. And so we really got the California bug. And we came back with that race car and put it on the trailer, sold the house, and away we went to sunny California.
Amazing. And the rest is history, of course. And you also mentioned that your dad actually developed one of the first torsion bar suspensions for race cars.
My gosh, you read every detail.
Well, I try.
Good. Yes, he did. I think that was the last car he built. It was in 1954, and nobody had tried to use torsion bar suspension in them. It's without springs. It's actually a rubber in the frame that these arms are connected to, and I know Chrysler ended up putting that in their cars later on in the late 50s and early 60s, and a lot of race cars now have that.
That's great. So did your dad get a patent for that or anything?
No, he didn't. He just thought, that would be good. Oh, and I did find out the last car that my dad built, my mother sold it to somebody that came out from Indianapolis. That must have been 1973 or something. And it ended up in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum for a while.
Nice.
Well, some guy that was a car dealer, and he had a showroom, he would buy vintage race cars and put them in his showroom to display them. And he happened to buy from the Motor Speedway, he bought my dad's car. It was number 23. And long story short, he ended up storing it in a garage that he had next to his house with some other race cars, and the house caught on fire and burnt. And it burned all of the paint off of my dad's car, but the car pretty much survived. It melted. His son called me up, and they had sold the car to somebody else, and they wanted to know what color it was because they're restoring it now, and that was just about 3 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wow, that is really wild.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to put it back in some museum after they repaint it. And so I sent them pictures of it driving. And actually, if you go on YouTube and you look up a tribute to Milt Fankhauser, you'll see him racing at Indianapolis, and it's from the movie To Please a Lady, and then near the end, you see him driving the last car that he built, the car that it was number 23 that they just contacted me about.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I wrote a little song to it, a little instrumental song called Race Night.
Nice. I like that. Did your father ever get into any hardcore accidents when he was racing or anything like that?
One time he flipped end over end, and my mom and his mom were in the grandstands, and they both fainted when they saw his car flipping end over end. And they said when they woke up, my mom's sister, my aunt, told me this story. My dad was there in the grandstand holding her hand. He didn't even get hurt. And it's a miracle, because those cars back then, your head and your body kind of stuck out of the car. You didn't have a roll bar and a roll cage. Mm-hmm. You had to just duck down inside the car and hope your head didn't get hit.
Right. Yeah. His angels were watching over him on that one.
Yeah. But that's the only wreck that I know of that he was in.
That's really good, considering how much he drove.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's glad to hear that. That's pretty interesting about the number 23 race car, though. That'd be nice to see it when they paint it up.
Yeah, they're going to send me some pictures of it when they have it all restored.
Excellent. So we talked a little bit the last time about Maui in general. We were just discussing, but I know the first time you went out to Maui, obviously you have a connection on it, or to Maui on a spiritual level. You talk about Mu. So what exactly was it that drew you out there? I mean, was it a subconscious connection that you had to the island?
I think so, because I think I told you how we were living in Woodland Hills, a suburb of Los Angeles, and with my band, and we didn't have a name for the band, and we were playing all these gigs, and we'd change it to, Merrell and the Boys, or, we would just make up names, and the agents were saying, well, hey, this is hard to book you because you're always called something else, and you don't have a name, and it doesn't build any publicity that way. Mm-hmm. So I was cleaning up the log bin next to the fireplace in my rented house in Woodland Hills, and down in the bottom I pulled out this old, worn-out book, and it was, I think, a 1932 edition of The Lost Continent of Mu by James Churchward. I'd never heard anything about Mu, or I didn't know anything about it. And we all started reading the book, and we all got hooked on the book and thought, wow, this is fabulous. They're saying that a lot of the North and South American Indians came from a submerged land in the Pacific Ocean that the Hawaiian Islands were once part of, when the water was, up in the deserts here. And so we started studying the whole theory, and then a friend of ours moved to Maui that was also a musician, and that was, when did he move there? About 1969 or 70. And he was telling us about how there were several books written by Hawaiians about the people of Mu, and that they built a lot of the water tributaries and things that are out in the East Maui jungle. And that sparked our interest. So we went over there in 72 to check the place out, and then we were thoroughly hooked. And we told our record company and our agent and everybody we were moving to Maui. We saved up our royalties and all of our gig money, and I had a new 1971 Cadillac, and we had a big equipment truck, and we just sold everything. And our engineer and producer thought we were crazy, you know. And we moved to Maui, and it was very inspirational. We started writing, you know, different music, and the whole vibe of the lost continent of Mu came through in the music, and I immediately started asking every old Hawaiian that would talk to me about Mu and were there any ruins. And I think I told you about those pillars I found in the jungle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fascinating.
And the old Hawaiian guy said he played down there when he was a kid, down in this valley, but his parents would always scold him for going down there and tell him that the Mu people were going to get him if he kept going down there. And I said, where is this place at? Can you show me? And he took me to the edge of the trail, and there was a stone walkway going down into this valley, but he was afraid. He wouldn't go back down there. It was a taboo.
Wow.
And I went down there, and I felt like I was Indiana Jones before the character had invented it, because I walked up to this pristine little waterfall with these 4 pillars that were about 30 feet high that looked like, I don't know, something from a Grecian ruin. But then the platform that it was all on was perfectly cut stone, looked like Mayan Indian stonework. And then I noticed this sidewalk that went down under the jungle towards the ocean, and I crawled on my hands and knees, and the mosquitoes were huge down there. They were almost as big as a small bird. I mean, it was, yeah. And so I crawled on my hands and knees, and I got to the edge, and I could see this stone sidewalk going off into the ocean under the water, and the water was clear enough that I could see the lava where it flowed over the sidewalk. So I knew the sidewalk was older than that lava flow. And I think they told me at that time that lava flow was 890 years old.
Oh, wow.
So those ruins were definitely over 1,000 years old, whatever they are.
Right. And what part of the island was that on?
That's on the East Maui side. It's off of the Hana Highway.
Okay, yeah.
And you have to cross Hawaiian land to get to this place. And people have tried to get me to tell them exactly where it was, and I really don't feel I can do that. But if they find it on their own, you know, I don't want the Kahamoi family to know I told them.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. You know, there's something, you have to keep things sacred, especially, it's almost like that data was for you. That experience was for you to have, and sometimes
but
you don't.
There are other things, Solaris, along the Hana Highway. If you go off on either the ocean side or the mountain side, you'll see these rock tributaries for water that were made, and all the Hawaiians say that the Menehunis, the little people, built them. And they, you know, a lot of people believe the Menehunis were descendants of the people of Mu. And I know author Susan Martinez. Do you know her?
I've heard of her, yeah.
Yeah, I helped her. I gave her some information on history of the Menehunis for her latest book.
Oh, nice.
I think it's out now. But there are things there that you can see. And then on the other side, past where you used to be on Kihei, if you just keep going out towards McKenna Beach, you know.
Oh, yeah, I used to go up there all the time, yeah.
Okay, you know where the road ends past McKenna Beach and it's a lava field?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's a trail that goes out into that lava flow, and that's where it's 7.5 miles out there. There's a big stone building, no roof on it, that's as big as a drugstore, and over in the floor of that building there's a hole, and there's a rickety ladder that somebody made, and when you go down in there, that same kind of stone-cut floor that I was talking about that looks like Mayan Indian is in this cellar, if you will, and it has rock walls that are stonework. It's not Hawaiian, you can tell, because all the Hawaiian buildings are like lava boulders stacked on each other. This is like cut with a milling machine or something so tight. And as you walk out on that trail, it's a gravel road with rock walls past McKenna. You'll come to these mountains of lava that have gone across the road, and you've got to climb up over the lava, and then you see this road, and they call it the King's Highway. And then out to the left, I started noticing all of these doorsteps and foundations that were covered up with lava. And when I was on Coast to Coast about 2 years ago, a couple was vacationing on Maui, and they heard me talking about this, and they wanted to go out into that lava flow. They emailed me the next day, and I said, it's very treacherous, and it's very hot out there, and there's not trees, and there's no water. So if you go out there, make sure you take food and lots of water. Well, they didn't make it all the way to that building I was talking about, but they found a whole bunch of other ruins, and the guy actually photographed them with his cell phone and emailed them back to me. And he said, I couldn't believe it. It was all there, just like you said. But what happened, his wife got heat exhaustion, and he was afraid she wasn't going to make it out of there, and he was practically carrying her to try to get her back to where they parked the car.
Oh, geez. Wow. You know, go ahead.
There's that area that they say there was a white race living there when the Hawaiians came from Tahiti. And there's an axe head that you can see in the Bishop Museum in Honolulu that was found in that area, and it's believed to be of Viking origin, is what they said.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And then I told you about the pyramid I found in
Right. I mean, you're just like,
Crater.
you are an Indiana Jones because, boy, doorways open up when you show up, huh?
And, people emailed me after I was on Coast to Coast, and a young Hawaiian girl in her 20s, and she said, I was born here. My parents were born here. Nobody's ever told me about this. And it's like, they don't really want to say anything about this.
Do you think a lot of people know, the islanders, or do you think that only a select few know, maybe some of the elders?
I think it's only the older ones. And I don't know. There's a lot of things that they believe are taboo that just, maybe they don't even want their kids to know about it or something. Right. Or it's so treacherous to go find these things, just like that pyramid that's in the middle of the crater. I mean, I could have killed myself trying to get to the thing. It looked like it was, maybe a quarter of a mile away, and I didn't realize how tall it was sticking up on the horizon. And I had to jump these deep chasms and things to get to it, and then I crawled up on the side of it, and I got such bad vertigo, I thought I was going to pass out. And then I managed to climb down and find a level enough place with my shaky hands and a camera that thank God, I got some pictures of that pyramid, and it's in my book, the pictures of those pillars and the pyramid. So there's a lot of things there, even on that island, that nobody talks about and most people don't know about.
Right. It certainly is a power spot. There's no doubt about that. What's interesting is that you're able to locate these things on an intuitive level almost. It's like you're psychically drawn to power spots and sacred sites. And in my opinion, it's quite fascinating. Now, I don't know what they're doing with that pyramid right now. Are people still able to go down there and go and investigate?
Well, you're not supposed to leave the trail. In fact, when I talked about it and it got in the newspaper, the Parks Department had a little talk with me and said that I really shouldn't have done that. You're not supposed to, there's signs posted. Have you ever been in the crater?
I actually haven't gone down in it. I've been up in Haleakala several times. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you go down the trail, there's signs posted everywhere. Don't leave the trail
Okay.
because it's so treacherous, and they don't want you to leave it. But the last thing I heard, and that was in, I think, the late 80s, the Parks Department did let the National Geographic Society go over to it with a bunch of guides and people helping them, and they were using ropes and ladders and scaffolding, which I didn't have any of that. I was just a crazed musician on a quest. And they let them, actually, they had some kind of an auger that was powered, a gas-powered auger that you can drill holes in rocks. They let them drill a hole in the side of it, and they concluded that it was just the capstone of a bigger, if you want to call it a pyramid, a bigger pyramid that went down under the lava flow.
And so was it a natural pyramid formation or something that looked like a structure from a different race or something?
Well, one side of it looks natural. It's kind of deteriorated and craggy. And then the other side almost looks slick, like it's been polished out of one big piece of stone. So some geologists say, it could be columnar basalt, and it just, shot up and dried that way. But, I mean, it's too perfect to me. I know nature does a lot of perfect things, but it's too pyramidal shaped perfectly to just be an odd thing of lava that shot up in the air and dried that way.
Right, certainly stands out without a doubt. And what color was the stone when you were talking about the stone walls? What color was the stone?
Well, it's kind of a grayish. It looks a little like lava.
Okay.
Rock. It's sort of that grayish slate kind of color. Oh, and an interesting thing, Solaris, there was just something in a travel magazine where some British guy went to the King's Highway that I was talking about, past McKenna there, and he found all those ruins that were out there, and he was writing this story, and he took these beautiful pictures of it all. I don't know what the magazine is. I'll have to look. But he was acting like he discovered it. Nobody's ever known about it. And he was saying that it was a 220-mile coastline that he walked. Well, there's no 220-mile coastline. He was embellishing the story quite a bit. But he did see those ruins, and he did some beautiful pictures of the King's Highway that were published in color in this magazine.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Well, it's it's interesting how everybody likes to stake the claim, huh? You know how many times I've been out there past McKenna too? I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many times. I probably walked right past it and didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
People have wanted me to go back out there, and I went out there in my 30s. And I said I couldn't hike out there now. I'd have to have a helicopter.
Yeah, that's quite the trek.
Oh, it is. And you can get, heat exhaustion really easy.
Yeah, I'm sure you have to go out early morning probably, or late in the evening, but then you couldn't see very much, right?
No.
Yeah.
And early in the morning, we went out there early in the morning, but still there's no way you can go out enough to see all of these things. You could never make it to this building that's 7.5 miles. We camped out when we went to that. It took 2 days.
Wow.
And we were young, strong guys, and we were exhausted when we got back.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Drained.
Yeah. Did you ever have any past life recall when you lived on the island? Did you ever have any regression done or anything like that?
No, but Sam Lono, a kahuna, told me that I was there on Mu, and that I was one of the people that lived there on Mu, and that's why I knew so much about it, and I could intuitively find these places.
Right. That makes sense. Cellular recall.
Yeah, and he was a Hawaiian kahuna.
Nice.
and it was hard to even get to sit down and talk with him. He heard, his grandson heard our band playing at a concert on Maui and said that we were called Moo. And he looked at our picture and he said, "Oh, I want to meet this guy."
Nice.
So they took me to his house.
Very special. Yep, he got a vibe off you.
Yeah.
For sure. Did they ever talk to you about the night marchers or anything when you lived out there?
No, I've heard of that, though.
Right,
I heard of the night marchers, yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think we touched on some stories the last time you were on the show, but yeah, I've been, over in Eau Valley, there's a lot of that going on, energetically speaking. It's very charged. So, yeah. And I never got a bad vibe off of them, although a lot of people are very terrified, and the locals are very, very superstitious of it. But it's very interesting. Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, on so many different levels. And once again, that's the dimensional space between the space where there are spirits and nature spirits, and then you have the Moo. I mean, it's fascinating. And that's why it's such a shame to see it all kind of go downhill. I'm hoping that's not the case. I haven't been over there in a while.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
I went to Eau Valley the last time I was there, and it still had that vibe to me that it did before. And, Eki Crater that's there, by Eau, that has a lot of energy, too. I went up there once with a group, and we spent the night up there, and that was one of the scariest nights I ever spent, with the wind howling, and there's these, lava tubes and holes in the ground where you can get in, and the wind was just fierce up there. But I forget when it was. It's in some Hawaiian history books. In the late 20s or early 30s, there was an archaeological team and people from National Geographic that went up there, a whole, group, and they disappeared. They never came out again.
I think I heard something about that also.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a strange vibe over there at nighttime, but they close the Eau Valley at night now. I mean, at least I thought they did. Yeah. So but I remember I was always drawn to that area all the time. Yeah, and supposedly that's where the night marchers hang out, and I've always felt good vibes there. I mean, I think that there was a huge battle fought there, if I remember correctly. So there was a lot of tragedy.
That's right. They said the stream ran red with blood from the battle that was fought there.
Right, and it's almost like what I noticed was like an electrical charge in the atmosphere. Sometimes it's the water. I mean, it's not just the conductivity of the water, but there's something there that really charges that whole area. It's really fascinating, but I love Maui. It's one of my favorite places too. I must say.
I love Maui too.
Every time you come on my show, we start talking about Maui. It's like, forget the rest of the show now.
Yeah, the back of my 1976 Maui album, my solo album that I did after my band Moo broke up, the back cover, I'm sitting in front of that straw Hawaiian house, and it's still there. It's a little more deteriorated, but that's the back cover of my 1976 Maui album. Nice. And it's still available on CD, and a label in Spain just contracted with me. They're going to put it back out on vinyl.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I like vinyl.
Yeah, a lot of labels in Europe, in Germany, and Sweden, Spain, Greece, they still issue things on vinyl, on album, and they say that they even put out some 45s that radio stations over there still play vinyl on the air.
That's awesome. I wish I had kept all my 45s. I used to have a big collection.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Some of those old records, are worth a lot of money now.
Yeah, they certainly are. My mother, she had music with her sisters, and we still have a 78 from when they were produced their own little album. They were on CBS. I mean, they did the big band thing, but it's kind of cool to have that. I'll have to send you a copy.
Yeah.
But their harmony was like the Andrews sisters. They did really sang really well. So yeah, I think that's kind of cool for sure. Now I remember when you were talking about Haleakala a little bit, you mentioned that the Hawaiians had a name for the spacecraft, which was the flying pearly shells.
Yeah, because they would see them coming out of the crater, both on Oahu, the big island in Maui, and they would see these lights come out of the crater and dive into the ocean, and then come out of the ocean and go back into the crater. And I know there was a lot of sightings on the way to Hana in Wailua Valley. And that was a valley that you could go up and end up in the crater, and they called them the flying pearly shells.
And do you know what year that was?
Oh, gosh, that would have been in the 1800s.
Okay, so this has been going on for a long time.
Oh, yeah, it's been going on for a long time. And there's a book, I think it's still in print in Hawaii, the Theosophical Society put it out. I don't know if you could get it here, maybe some bookstore, but over there you could still get it. It was called Children of the Rainbow, and it was the legends and myths of the pre-Christian Hawaiian religion, the people of Mu. And it talks about all of this in this book. And it was written by a Hawaiian, Leilani Melville.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I'll have to try and hunt that down.
Yeah.
I'd like to read more about that. Yeah, you know, when you think about it, you kind of wonder if some of the UFO sightings are connected to covert military. But then when you hear that these things have been around since, 1800s or prior, you know something. And plus the sacred Mu area, Lemuria, whatever you want to call it. So there's definitely something there that's very, very ancient.
Yes. And just like that, signals from Malibu, I think when I was talking to you before, I told you we used to go down there and surf when I was a teenager. And I remember one night we were done surfing, and some local surfers were hanging out and were building a bonfire. And they said, "Oh, you guys ought to stick around and watch the lights come in and out of the ocean." And we went, "What?" They said, "Yeah, there's these interesting lights that go in the water and then shoot back up." And that was right near Point Doom, exactly where this thing is underwater there, but nobody knew there was, a thing that looked like a building under the water.
Right.
And we kind of laughed, and we're driving back up here, up to the coast where we live, and we all just thought, oh, they're watching pelicans, because pelicans do that when they're fishing. They dive in the water and grab a fish and fly back out. And that's what we thought we were seeing. But what I didn't know was this thing with these lights going up and down in the water there near Malibu had been going on for all of those years.
Right.
So
that's pretty interesting right there. What color were those lights?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
They,
just curious.
They didn't tell me what color they were, just that you could see some lights. And I don't know if I told you before either. I was looking at a topographical map, and I figured out where this thing is under the water, straight up in the mountain. And I've been to this place before. Up in the mountain in a straight line, there are these two monolith rocks with petroglyphs carved into them.
That's very interesting.
I don't know if the Indians did that or somebody before that, but it's kind of interesting that that's almost in a straight line if you point it out to the ocean.
So you were looking on a topographical map and not Google Earth or anything like that, right?
Yeah, and I've been in that area before, and I've heard about that because the students from Pepperdine would go up there and drink beer. That was one of their beer drinking hideouts. So I want to go down there with a camera sometime and just shoot some of that, get a little more, of a document of that, and maybe hang out there when it gets dark and see if we see anything.
Right. Yeah, putting the pieces of the puzzle together to some degree, I would think. But yeah, they call the Malibu, they wanted to call it the Malibu base, but it's I call it a Malibu underwater anomaly, but nothing else has been said about it. From what I understand, it's kind of been falling off the radar, and I don't know if that's done kind of deliberately or if it's just it's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know either. It's funny, my other friend, a musician, Bruce Clark, that is played and recorded with me, and his parents lived in Malibu for a while. And he said, Merrell, he said, don't you know, Malibu is just, they're all aliens there. He said, that's why they call it the colony.
Oh, that's funny.
And he went on this whole rap about how the strangest people live in Malibu. From his viewpoint, he lives in Northern California.
Oh, that's
He
funny.
says they're all aliens there.
Maybe they are.
Nobody knows it.
Yeah, well, there's something going on in that area. I don't know what, but I've only been
Yeah.
out there once, and I didn't really get a real vibe of anything. But yeah.
Michael Luckman, I think we talked about that. He wanted to do a concert there and have the bands play all kind of space music.
Mm-hmm.
And he had talked, believe it or not, because he was friends with Mick Jagger and David Bowie, he had talked to both of them about it. And then he asked me if I wanted to play.
Wow.
And I said, sure. But he started investigating it and with his lawyers and stuff and going through the city's permits and having enough security, and they were worried about parking and a whole bunch of wild and crazy concert goers, invading the town. And he was thinking of trying to do it at Pepperdine University. But I don't think that probably isn't going to happen now since he passed away.
Yeah, it's a shame. And that was recent, wasn't it? I think I saw something on your Facebook page with that, didn't I?
Yeah, that was a shock to me. He had a stroke, and just all of a sudden I talked to him about 2 weeks before, and I'd emailed him a few times and didn't get anything back, and I went, wow, I wonder what happened. And then all of a sudden I heard from a friend that he had passed away.
That's too bad on there. But
yeah.
He's in another universe, probably looking down, smiling at you at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, helping you out as a space brother now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love the music you've created. Like I said, I think this album you're putting out is going to be awesome. And of course, the biography is something that I really suggest people read. Now, that biography is basically, it's on Amazon.com, but where else can people get a copy of it if they want to purchase it?
Oh, you can get it at Barnes and Noble. And then I just heard somebody ordered it from a store in Los Angeles. It's fairly well known, a regular bookstore. It's called Book Soup.
Nice.
So I guess you can go into your regular bookstore anywhere, and if they don't have it, you can order it.
That's awesome. Well, I recommend people pick it up.
Yeah, people say, though, when Amazon has the best price, the cheapest, and usually people get it within 3 to 5 days when they get it from Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon does a good job, usually. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure on that one. Now, are you a diver? I know you said you surf, but do you dive too?
Yeah, inside the album, I was just showing it to some friends that are over. There's a picture of me diving off of Maui, over close to Lanai.
Nice.
And but I haven't done that in a number of years.
Right. So when did you give that up?
Oh, probably when I moved back here around 1987.
Did you?
I haven't gone diving since.
Do you surf anymore or anything like that?
No, I don't surf anymore, but up until about 95, I was still surfing, but I do it mostly when I go to Hawaii because the water is just too cold for me here. Right. I got spoiled.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it?
Going through putting on a wetsuit and all that stuff, I like to,
right?
Just surf with trunks.
Well, I don't blame you. Yeah, I love it. The ocean is incredibly warm over there on the island, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you obviously liked living in the jungle, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I built my own 2-story house in the jungle, and it was in the little community of Huelo, Huelo, and I was about 2 miles down a dirt road off of the Hana Highway, and leased the land from a Hawaiian family, and I had 2.5 acres of bananas and papayas and other things that I grew there.
That's so nice. I love that. I know I used to pick up avocados on my runs out there.
Yeah.
I go for a run and there'd be these big avocados, and I just...
Exactly. I've told people, they go to the store here and buy these little tiny avocados, and I said I used to pick them up for free on my way home from town. They were as big as footballs. Remember those real big ones? And just delicious.
Yeah, that's what I love about the island. You can truly live off the land if you know how to farm,
I had my pickup truck and a picker pole. You know, any place I went that I saw something, and there's a lot of stuff. In fact, in Makawao, in back of one of the restaurants, there were these huge avocado trees, and nobody cared. They all just, you know, fell off the tree and rolled down to the creek, and you could just go, coming home, I'd just pick a sack of free avocados.
Oh, that's nice. I remember Makawao. I used to love it up there.
Yeah.
That was really nice. And then you grew up, and then there was like mist around there a lot of the time, from what I remember.
Uh-huh.
That was really, yeah, you bring back some nice memories.
Yeah,
Well,
I played in that place that's on the corner of Olinda Road in Baldwin.
oh, wow, okay.
And in the old days, it was called the Rodeo Club, and now it's Casanova's.
Right. Yeah, I used to go in there all the time.
And I played there when it was the Rodeo Club, and I played there once the last time when it was Casanova's. And a little bit of history about that place. Bob Hope did a USO show in there during the war.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's how old that building was. And if you go down Baldwin all the way, and then you go over to where the road goes down to Haiku from Makawao, there's the old Marine Base memorial
Right, I remember that, yeah.
park there. And that hill that's called, they called it Giggle Hill, because the Marines would take the Hawaiian girls up on the hill, and you would always hear this giggling.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
Do you know the hill I mean? It's got a bunch of trees on it.
Yeah.
Before you get down to Haiku. I went there and ate an ice cream sandwich and just took in the vibe.
Oh, that's so nice.
Time I was there.
Yeah.
I just kind of went back to my old haunts, and then I played with Willie Nelson's guitar player. He has a Tuesday night jam at his house, and it's out in Haiku. And he has a big studio, and a lot of different musicians get together there. Sometimes Willie will actually come and jam, and Pat Simmons of the Doobie Brothers that lives over there some of the time now. And the night I was there, Bonnie Raitt's bass player was there, and we did a jam, and it was a lot of fun. And I saw people there I hadn't seen in 30 years at least. And we made a TV show out of part of that trip.
Nice.
I'm seen all over in California here now and in Hawaii, but other people, that want to see the show, I got to put more of these on YouTube.
Yeah, or even you might want to, I don't know if you can do the pay-per-view or anything like that. That might be a nice little idea, though.
Well, the record company I'm on, there is a site. If you type in Merrell Fankhauser's Tiki Lounge, I think that's the way they have it listed. There's 50 shows that are up for pay-per-view.
Excellent. So that's great. That's a little extra there. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Willie Nelson, if I remember correctly, his son is quite the guitarist as well.
Oh, yeah. I knew both of them when they were young, Jake
Wow.
and Lucas, yeah.
Yeah, I remember them playing. I think his son was playing on stage. So I saw on Maui. This was several years back, obviously. But yeah, he was really good.
Yeah,
he was so young.
Yeah. He was at the concert that Willie and I did in 2000 backstage watching us play Wipeout.
Oh, that's totally cool.
And there's a picture of him now. I didn't even hardly recognize him because he's grown up and changed so much and has long hair. There's a big, really almost life-size picture in Charlie's restaurant in Paia, inside the restaurant.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah.
And they've got a lot of Willie's memorabilia and gold records and stuff on the wall in there, because Willie became friends with the guy that owned Charlie's restaurant. And the interesting thing is, I was talking to him one day. His name is Jim Fuller, and he asked me where I came from before I moved to Maui. This was in the 70s. And I said, oh, a little town on the California coast called Arroyo Grande. And he went, Arroyo Grande? He said, my brother lives there. My brother has a tire store. And I knew his dad and his brother.
Wow.
And he became friends with Willie Nelson. And Willie would go into Charlie's just unannounced and pull out his old acoustic guitar and sit on the bar stool and start playing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Down-to-earth kind of folks, right?
Oh, he's really something. He's the most down-to-earth guy you'd ever meet.
Right.
Yeah, really a nice guy.
That's why I like the island. It used to have that nice vibe to it. It used to be down-to-earth. I hope it's still like that. Like I said, how often do you go back to Maui or the islands?
Yeah. How often
How often?
I go back?
How often do you go back and visit?
Oh, I usually make it over there about every 4 years, and sometimes somebody will have a gig they want me to do, and I haven't taken my band over there in quite a while, though.
Yeah, it'd be nice for you to do that sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let me know if you do. I might take a trip out there.
All right. Yeah. Willie's guitar player that lives on Maui, Donnie, he has a band, and part of Willie's band that's in Hawaii that he uses all the time, and they do gigs together, and they're always inviting me over to play some gig with them. The last one we did was a fundraiser for Montessori schools over
That's
there.
Nice.
And then we did the big one with Willie. That was the last time I played with his whole band, was in 2000, and Don Ho opened up for us.
Oh, wow.
And Don Ho was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something.
Yeah, it really is. All those big names, and they're in another universe now. But, yeah, it's amazing. You know, the signature of music is just phenomenal. When you think about all the talented people that have been on this world and played such wonderful music. And, of course, you're one of those. So it's nice. It's always so nice to have you on my show, I swear. It's really, really pleasant and just feels like talking to an old spiritual friend. So
yeah, I feel the same way, Solaris. It's really great. I thank you so much for having me on. Oh,
it's my pleasure. Believe me, it's always wonderful. Of course, we go into different directions, but that's okay. You know, Maui's sacred to my heart as well. So, you know, with all your experiences on this world, and I know you're very advanced, you're just very enlightened in general. But was there anything that really awakened you to the bigger cosmic scenery? At what point in your life did you really start to switch on?
Boy, you know, I always had, I can't explain the feeling. I always had some kind of a feeling that there was some presence with me, even when I was a young kid. And I'm Swiss, and my mother was German, but my dad was half Wyandot Indian. And I think there's something in there with the Native American thing and the European part. I don't know. Something tells me that has something to do with this. I guess you would have to call it a cosmic searching that I feel. Right.
Well, it sounds like you have I was going to say a cosmic bloodline, but there's something really unique about that. That is a nice mix. And when you talk about cellular memory, and of course we do access our ancestral bloodline to some degree through the psyche. So, you know, a lot of the information you're accessing, whether it's through music or, you know, whatever you're doing here with just experiencing things that are very sacred, to me sounds like you're opening up on a lot of levels there. It's kind of unique. Yeah. I think it's...
Well, maybe we'll meet up on Maui someday.
I'm telling you. Well, I'm overdue for a trip out there, and I have my sister as an excuse to go visit, too, of course. She never leaves that island. She stays over there quite a bit. But, yeah, it's just...
Well, I can always email you, and I know something's going to come up over there.
Yeah, let me know, seriously.
Involved in.
Yeah, that's one place I always love to go. I mean, it just brings back fond memories on a lot of different levels there. For sure. Now, you lived near Hana. Now, you know the whole thing about Hana being kind of a spooky place and people are very superstitious, but you never had any problem over there.
No, not at all.
That's nice. And I've heard so many different tales about the superstition associated with the Hana Highway. So I was curious, insofar as if you've ever picked up on anything that was a little ominous.
The only thing that happened once was a friend and myself were hiking in the jungle off the road to Hana, near Naihiku, and we sat down in this little clearing in the jungle, and we both kind of got the willies, got a funny feeling. And we looked around and we realized we were sitting in the middle of an old heiau, Hawaiian temple.
Mm-hmm.
And we just said a little blessing and, thanks for letting us rest here, and walked out. But that is the only time that I ever, felt like, okay, there's an energy here. And then one time my sister and her husband and my niece were visiting, and I was driving them to the airport, and we stopped at this big heiau that's up on the hill near Wailuku. And my sister is really into spiritual stuff, and she wanted to see this old Hawaiian temple. So we got back in the car, and we drove to the airport, and my niece, she was real young, and she said, "Mom, look at this neat rock I found." And my sister goes, "Where did you get that?" She goes, "Oh, at that old place we were at." And my sister goes, "Merrell, let's get back in the car," because we both knew. We drove back to the heiau, and we said, "Okay, where exactly did you pick that rock up?" And she showed us, and we put it back, and we had enough time to get them on the airplane. But, every year they get rocks mailed back to Hawaii that somebody took, because people have bad things happen to them. It's like bad karma to take a rock and take it away from the island. People have, gotten sick or just had a bunch of odd accidents happen and broken bones and, all kinds of unexplainable things. So they say that, I forget how many pounds of rocks they get mailed back to.
That's so funny. I know.
Hawaii every year.
Well, you're not supposed to take the lava for sure. Anything else, in my opinion, you have to be very, very careful, of course. And you can get the little tikis and souvenirs like the amakuas, which I love. I think those are kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on that one. There is something to be said about the vibration, and you don't want to mix that energy and bring it back to the mainland. And I think the mainland has a lot of strange vibes right now. So I notice as soon as I get on the plane and go back to the mainland, I feel like I'm in an alien world. I mean, it just feels so weird, opposed to being on Maui, for example. Yeah, it's like night and day for sure. Now, I remember I think it was chapter 24 in your book, you talk about the Tiki Lounge returns to Area 51, which I thought was kind of cool because you touched on the air base, Area 51. Well, a show you did in Rachel, Nevada, if I'm not mistaken, near the border.
Yeah, we went out there because two people that used to work in the film industry that I was friends with for years, Dr. David Youngclaws and his wife, and he had studied Mu and UFOs for years, and he knew Bettina Marcus, who played the Green Lady in the TV show Lost in Space, and she lived in Las Vegas. So I went out there and I interviewed her, and then I said, I want to go out near Area 51 to the Little Alien Inn. And so we packed up some food and drove out there and went to the place, and I did a little short introduction in front of the building, and then I went in and met the owner, and they let me film inside. And then the owner, though, didn't want to be on camera, and her husband, who had actually started the thing, had passed away a few months prior. And then some people came in, and they said, we saw something. It was black, and it was waffling in the wind. And the lady said, well, you want to go talk to that guy over there with the camera crew, the guy with the blonde hair and the sunglasses. I thought that was interesting. She was sending these strangers over to me, so they gave me their whole spiel. And then, there was nothing there in Rachel but a bunch of house trailers, single-wide house trailers. And when we pulled up, about a dozen people ran over to see who we were, like they hadn't seen any people in a long time. And it's really desolate out there.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it almost, spots of it reminded me of the crater. And I did a video out there. We shot some footage of me singing a song, and that one's not on YouTube either.
Oh.
You're jogging my mind that I should put a lot of this on YouTube.
Right, yeah, I have a lot of ideas for you, but guess what? We're getting ready to wrap this up. I can't believe this has gone by so fast, Merrell. But it's been a pleasure to have you on, and I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And, of course, come back anytime when you're ready to provide us with more information and exciting new music and whatever else you want to discuss with the books.
Okay, I'll make sure you get the full-length CD when it comes out, too.
Excellent. And also, I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. I hope you enjoyed Merrell. I certainly did. And stay tuned for Dr. J, Radio Live, coming up next on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We're leaving you with messages from the dome or on the dome. And thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Solaris.
Thank you, Merrell.
Aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo.